Um, as much as I enjoyed this film's going to be a pretty difficult one for me to review. Hey guys, it's Daniel here, and after 2 years we have finally got our return to form for Marvel Cinematic Universe movies after Spider-Man Far From Home. It's great to have the Marvel Cinematic Universe doing more movies again, and as a way to celebrate it, I am here to review the new movie Black Widow. So, what's the basic premise of Black Widow? Well, it takes place between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, and follows the unknown adventures that takes a pretty good toll on Natasha Romanoff A.K.A. Black Widow. She meets up with her old loved ones from the past, while also dealing with this one guy who wronged her in the past, and now is trying to find this guy to get her revenge, while also dealing with the threats of the Taskmaster, and crazy shenanigans ensues. Now, I'm pretty sure that we've all been waiting for a Black Widow movie. I mean, she's an interesting character with great action, great humour, great look, and Scarlett Johansson does a fantastic job expressing those aspects of her character. So, I, like many others, was really excited to hear that she was finally going to get her own solo MCU movie. And then the incident in Avengers Endgame occurred, and the excitement for a Black Widow movie started taking a back seat, because a lot of people felt like that the movie was no longer relevant, like nobody cared. And while I felt like this movie could have been released between Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, I was still pretty excited to see how they were going to properly send off her character. So I finally got to see the movie, and after seeing the film, what do I think of it? I liked it, but I do have some major issues with the movie, and I was not kidding when I said that this is probably going to be one of the most difficult movies I've ever had to review on my channel, because I had some major issues with the movie that kind of contradicted my enjoyment of it, but overall the movie gave me joy. I really think it's a great Marvel film. But it does have some major issues. But before we get to the issues, let's talk about what I liked. First of all, the first act of this movie definitely set it up for what I felt like the movie could have been an awesome movie. Because most first acts in movies take forever to build up to excitement, and it was slow and all that. But this movie's first act had the excitement. It was thrilling, it was intense, it was epic, it was fun. It was hilarious, like absolutely hilarious, and the actors felt like they were doing very well in the roles at first. I think the best aspect of the first act, in my opinion, is the interactions between Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova. Wow! These two felt like actual sisters. I mean, they're supposed to be adoptive sisters, but they felt like actual sisters, because they bicker, come up with back and forth quips now and again, criticize their actions both in a dramatic way and a humorous way, and Scarlett Johansson and Florence Pugh felt like they were having so much fun arguing with each other. I loved their interactions at first, and honestly, if the movie just had these two like interacting more and all that in the second act and in the third act, then maybe the movie could have been a lot better. The acting is fantastic. It seemed like a lot of the actors and actresses were having a blast with their roles. Scarlett Johansson is still pretty good in the role of Black Widow, although her character... I'll talk more about her character later, but she was still very good in the role, showing the humorous side and the dramatic side and the very stubborn side of her character pretty well. I am gonna miss her as Black Widow after Avengers Endgame and all that. She was such a good character. But honestly, Black Widow is not the best thing about the movie, because in my opinion, the best aspect of this movie the most awesome aspect of the movie, the most hilarious aspect of the movie, and what is, in my opinion, the saving grace to this movie that pushes it up to my final grade that I'll give at the end of this review, is Natasha's Russian family. Wow, these characters felt like the most fun I have ever had in the entire movie. These characters were caring, they were supportive, they were also in fight, and they are hilarious, like absolutely hilarious. They got the biggest laughs out of any character in the entire movie. There were two members of the family that really stole the movie for me. The first one is Yelena Belova, Natasha's Russian sister, played by Florence Pugh. This is a great addition to the MCU, making her come off as sympathetic, but also come off as a ball of barrels of laughter, just laughing and having fun, and I felt like that she was enjoying what she was doing. Florence Pugh, from Fighting With My Family, knows how to pick humour at her best and all that. She also has a lot of awesome moments in the movie, in action. I cannot wait to see more of her character because they leave her off as that she's going to return in a future MCU project. And the other great character and performance is, without a doubt, Alexei, aka Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. If you want me to describe Red Guardian in this film, imagine if you took Dave Bautista's Drax, put him in the middle of Stranger Things, and then boom, there's your Russian Captain America in this film. David Harbour, who I also really loved from Stranger Things, felt like he was having the most fun in his role. Constantly laughing and having fun, just like Florence Pugh's character, but also showing a caring side to his personality that makes him come off as kind of adorable. But he's just enjoying what he's doing. It's like a pantomime kind of performance, you know what I mean? It's like he's aware that he's playing a version of a character that Jim Hopper was fighting against in the third season of Stranger Things, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna have lots of fun with this. And I know a lot of people make fun of the voice, like his fake Russian accent, and yes, his voice is very fake and all that, but I loved it. It just added to the balls to the walls blast that David Harbour was having, just constantly hamming his fake Russian accent that made him the most fun character in the movie. I cannot wait to see more of his character. In fact, Natasha's Russian family, all three of them, should get their own solo movie and show. The Russian Romanoffs. Yeah, that's Russian. That's what they should call the movie or show. The Russian Romanoffs. They are fantastic. I love them. They are honestly the saving grace of this film. And the last thing that I really enjoyed in this movie is that some of the action scenes were really cool and were very entertaining to watch. The two best action scenes in the entire movie, in my opinion, is first off the fight between Natasha and Yelena when they first meet each other again. That fight was so awesome and intense. You could feel the punches that these two widows target in their faces. They had the same moves and same styles of combat. Like, you definitely feel like they're sisters at first. It's almost like they're clones or something, which makes sense because they're both widows and all that, so they had to be trained as the same fighters. But still, that fight was so intense and very fun at the same time. And you feel the punches, you feel the pain, but you also feel the hilariousness of what these two characters are going to be interacting with later on in the movie. And the second best action scene in the entire movie, in my opinion, is the scene where Natasha and Yelena are breaking Alexei out of prison. That fight was so awesome. It kind of reminded me of the prison scene in Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, Alexei is just like trying his best to get out of there. Natasha is just kicking soldiers left and right, and Yelena has no idea what she's doing in the helicopter. It almost feels like she doesn't care that she's on a mission. She's just having fun, and I love the crap out of that. But like I said before, even though I really enjoyed this film, I do have some problems with it. Especially one major one that I will get to eventually. Now, I have to let you know that this is my opinion on the faults that I personally found in Black Widow. You can take it, you can leave it. You can agree with me, or you can disagree with me. but this is just my opinion on Black Widow, which I still like. I really don't hate this film. Trust me, I really don't. But there are issues that plague it that I do need to address. And with that said, here we go. Remember when I said earlier that the first act was thrilling and awesome? Well, that's set up for what I thought the film was going to be, because that leads to my first issue with this film. Everything after the first act was decent. It was okay. It was pretty enjoyable. But it does kind of weigh down the movie for me a little bit. The action started to get a bit softer, like a bit of fluff. The characters, mainly one, isn't very interesting and all that. And the characters' motivations start to become, like, contradictory to their counterparts in past MCU movies. Why couldn't they just, like, replicate what they did in the first act to later acts of the movie? Or at least, if you're going to do the direction you did for the next two acts of the movie, at least make it a bit more better and less mean-spirited than I found it to be. Because it suddenly changes to what the two acts later turn out to be. Speaking of suddenly, that leads to my next issue with the movie. The pacing was a bit too rushed. I mean, this is a 2-hour and 15-minute movie. And it felt like it flew by because I was having so much fun, but it also rushed characters' motivations and behavior that really makes these characters not feel like the characters they did earlier on in the movie. I felt like they needed more time to really flesh them out, to make us understand their actions, to make us understand why they were doing what they were doing. And because the pacing is very rushed and all that, some of these characters don't have the full potential that I imagined to be. The biggest victim of this is our villains, mainly Taskmaster. Now, I was excited to see Taskmaster in this movie, because I never knew much about the character, and they never addressed who was the actor who played the character. And in the trailers, you don't see the character's face. It's covered with a mask, and of course, you don't get to see what the Taskmaster looks like until you see this film. What do I think of what we end up seeing? Well, I don't want to spoil what the Taskmaster looks like, but it's a pretty decent twist that makes the movie a bit more deep and all that. But the problem is that it doesn't really go anywhere, because it opens up a lot of potential, but the movie doesn't seem like it wants to execute that potential. But I bet they're just saving Taskmaster for a future movie, because the reveal of who the Taskmaster really was, I felt like could have been delved in a bit more. But the character still comes off as kind of sympathetic and all that. I also felt like that they could have done more with the other villain in the film. He wasn't given much potential either. They never made him come off as sympathetic and all that. I mean, he was kind of, but not to the point where I'm like, oh my god, I understand why he's doing what he's doing. But honestly, the villains I can tolerate compared to this one character. And I'm finally here to talk about the reason why this is probably a difficult film for me to review. Because, in my opinion, the biggest issue with this movie, the aspect that I felt like could have ruined the movie for me, but because the other members of the family was in the movie, it managed to save it. But the movie became less interesting and difficult to watch because of this one issue, is actually Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow herself. Now, on the plus side, Scarlett Johansson still does a good job playing the character, but it's not the actor I'm referring to, I'm talking about the character's writing. Because this version of Black Widow in the MCU doesn't feel like the character that I fell in love with. Now, in the first act, I still really liked her. I felt like she was still an interesting character. I felt sorry for what she went through, and I was interested to see how the character was doing during Civil War and Infinity War. And the interactions between her and Elena was humorously hilarious. But once she saves Alexei from prison, then she becomes a complete 180. She turns into an imposter of Black Widow. She doesn't feel like the same character she did before because she ends up turning into a despicable, unlikable character. She turns into a rude, selfish, arrogant, egocentric, revenge-hungry, ungrateful, and unpleasant character. That is not how I think of Black Widow. Because she could have gotten along with her family members, but she just feels like she's completely ignoring them just to focus on her one mission. And I get that's the point of the movie, but it just makes her character come off as despicable and unlikable to the point where we don't really feel sorry for her anymore, because she says things to her family members that just rub me the wrong way. Because Natasha does say something kind of selfish about her family, and Elena does get like angry and upset and all that, and honestly it's hard not to blame her. This was a pretty big deal, and so some of her actions in the movie really go against what her character was set up to be. Now, almost everything in the movie was set up due to a line Loki said in the first Avengers. I won't say what the line is, but if you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. And she does something that is, quote-unquote, haunting her. In the past, she does something to get revenge on this guy, and she makes a very willing decision. And this could have been interesting had it not go against her character, because she doesn't do it like by accident, like she's just determined, that to the point where she ends up ignoring it, and she does it by accident. She does an action in the past willingly and on purpose. She knew what she was doing, but she just goes ahead with no hesitations or remorse. That just, it just angered me that the character would do it. Like, the character would never do something like that. And honestly, she felt like the real villain of the movie, to the point where I actually ended up rooting for the villains in the climax. Sure, she does eventually change her character towards the end of the movie, but it's too late at this point. She's been on this revenge quest for so long that it's hard to see remorse deep down. So when she does finally develop a conscience towards the end, it's all too late. It feels like that the only reason that she did at the end is because the plot calls for it. Because, hey, she's our lead character, we better make her character suddenly change her moral compass at the end of the movie for the villains before the credits roll. And honestly, how are you supposed to feel sorry for her and understand that she is changing if she just does it at the last minute? You can't, movie! You just can't! Sorry about that. I didn't mean to yell. But still, this didn't feel like the character that she was in the movie. Again, it's because of the pacing that they really need to give more time to make us feel like that she does have a second conscience. See the reason why I'm struggling to talk about this movie? Because she's supposed to be the main character, and she was such a great character in the past. Honestly, if you release this movie in 2017, then her development in this movie could have been a lot better, because it just, I mean, seriously, why? And lastly, the climax of the movie, while fun in some parts, just felt like it went on for a tiny bit too long, and it wasn't as epic as I thought it would be, because most of the climax is just Black Widow and this villain talking, and I wanted this to be an epic battle, but it wasn't really an epic battle. I mean, there are some pretty good scenes in this final climactic battle, but as a whole, it just wasn't as thrilling as I thought it could have been. And the ending just ended so instant, like it felt a bit too easy. So overall, this was a really difficult film for me to review. I mean, I've spent like a lot of takes talking about this movie, but I kept having to redo takes because the microphone was like on mute a lot of the times. But it was also difficult to talk about the movie as well, because I do like this film. I really liked it. There's so many great things about it, and the Russian family definitely saved the movie for me. But at the same time, I can't deny the problems with this movie dealing with our titled character, because, again, why is Natasha such a psychopathic villainous bully in this film? That felt a bit like out of character for her. Like, seriously, what the hell did you do to her? But I am still gonna miss her character. I'm still gonna miss Scarlett Johansson in the role, because she was a great character. besides this film, and her scene in Endgame was pretty sad. So I am gonna miss her in the role. So long, Scarlett Johansson from the MCU. But it also makes way for Yelena Belova to get more screen time. I can't wait to see more of Florence Pugh or David Harbour or that other chick. And again, you should make the Russian Romanoffs show. That would be pretty funny, right? And they managed to save the movie from our lead character's despicable behaviour. And I will give the movie a 4 out of 5 stars. It's worth the watch. If you like Black Widow, I think you might enjoy the movie, but it depends on how you see her in this film. Do you like her? Did you hate her? But I don't know. But anyway, what do you think of Black Widow? Do you like it? Do you hate it? And what is your favourite MCU solo movie? And what solo movie would you like to see be made? They just made a Black Widow movie, and they might make a Yelena Belova storyline. But what would you like to see? Let me know in the comment section below. More reviews to come. Stuff to make. This is a new camera, so it was very difficult to film the reviews, so I hope it does turn out well. And I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, doing videos. Till then, peace out, man.